Hi, I'm Ross Jacobs and this is the third video in a series of 4 on lunging. The first 2 videos are already up on YouTube and I'll put a link in the description for those. The first one was the basic principles about why we lunge, what I hope to get out of it for my horse, and some of the equipment I prefer to use or I don't prefer to use. The second video was regarding how to get a horse started on the circle, and in particular talking about driving and directing. This video is going to be about focus, and then the last video to follow will be about straightness. Anyone that's been following my work for a little while, I hope I don't have to convince you the importance that I place on a horse's focus. In my book, The Essence of Good Horsemanship, I devote a third of the book talking about focus. And that's just an indication that I think it's vital. Not only is it vital, but it's the start. You need to have focus before you can get anything done with a horse. There's this old saying that goes something about, until the student enters the classroom, there can be no teaching. And that's equally true of horses. If their minds are not on the job, are not in the classroom, there's nothing for them to learn. Anything they do, they're just going through the motions. And things will stay at mediocre at best. So if I want my horse to learn anything, if I want things to change and improve, I need to help him have better focus. Lunging is problematic in this way for many people because I guess the majority of lunging I see in horses, it's actually designed not to help them focus. In fact, most horses go very robotically on the lunge. And this is because of the monotonous nature of just going around and around and around in circles. People get stuck with the routine of going around in a circle. And so very quickly, once the horse has figured out what his job is, he does it mindlessly. And when you want to change it, when you want to do something differently, it means you have to do a whole lot more because you have to wake him up and get him to pay attention to you. But working with a horse, as I've said many times, is a constant conversation. And I never want my horse to not be talking to me, as I try never to not be talking to him. So if I want Six here to do something, I ask her a question. Could you please? And it always starts as a very polite question. Even if I know she can't do it, I always start, could you please? I don't come in saying, come on, do it. So I ask with the question, could you please? And she comes back with a, no problem, I can do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, I'm not interested in it. And then, depending on the answer she gives me back, tells me what my next question will be and how I then go about helping her. And it goes back and forth like this all the time. And for most people, when it comes to lunging, that's difficult because they feel disconnected from their horses and the horse feels disconnected from them. So today I want to show just a few examples of how I might help a horse who's not paying attention to me. And the first thing I guess I have to point out is, or at least talk about briefly, is how do you know if a horse is paying attention or he's not? Well, it's really pretty simple. And it goes back to what I just said a minute ago. Ask them a question. And if it comes back easy, if it causes them no trouble for you to ask, see, irrespective of whether they can do what you're asking, but whether just paying attention to the question is a problem for them, that tells you whether they're focused or not. So if I ask Six to do something and she ignores it, so instead of asking it politely, I have to ask her a little louder, then I know she wasn't paying attention. And the more attention I get from her, the quieter I can ask, even if it's something she can't do. At least I know she's paying attention because I won't have to ask big. I just keep it small. So that's pretty much in general how you can figure out whether your horse is paying attention to you. Ask them to change their thought and see what happens. And if they're bracy, if they're late, if they're resistant, if they get whatever else stuck, then you know you've got more work to do. So once you realize your horse is not paying attention, what do you do about it? Well, you have to ask them to do things that cause them, motivate them to want to pay attention to you. And in general, there's two ways of doing this, as a general principle. One is that you ask them to do something they don't know how to do. And you keep asking till they try something. The second way is to ask them to something they know how to do, but make it more particular. Ask for better accuracy. Ask for more precision. And see what you get. So they can do something, but then ask them, can they do it in a different way? Or you ask them in a different way, or they perform it in a different way. For example, if I ask Six to back up, she knows how to back up with a slight polite pick up of the reins or a touch of the lead rope. But what if I ask her to back up 1 step back, 2 steps forward? That's something that might tell her she missed it, because when I ask her to change 1 step back and come forward, that requires a change of thought that she may not be ready for if she's not focused. So I would ask that again and again and again until it emotionally weighed nothing for her to take 1 step back, 2 steps forward and stop. So that's something else that you can add to your repertoire of ideas. So let's just briefly, I'll try and show you a few examples of things you could do. And I want to stress, these are not things you need to do. Don't take what I show you and try to copy them, because it may not be right for you or your horse. But they're just to get you kick-started on becoming imaginative and figuring out how I could get in touch with my horse's thought and keep the lines of communication open. One of the easiest things to do with a horse that's not paying attention to you is simply to touch them. You imagine if you're talking to somebody and they're off thinking about something else and you just tap them on the shoulder. It's a quick way to get their thought back to you and to have them pay attention to you. So if I ask Six to think out to her right, go out on the circle. She's a little dopey right now, but that's okay. I hope that she actually has a little trouble with this, because I'd like to show you when it's going badly. She's not thinking too much about going forward. But now let's imagine that she's lost in her thoughts and she's leaving in a hard way. If I go up and touch her, and just touch her, rub her, and then let her go, and keep her on the circle. I'll do it one more time. Just go up and touch her, and you can see there was a little hesitation. Her thought came straight back to me. And then I just let her go. Now, some people will go up to touch their horse and their horse will scoot, because it's almost like they got a fright. When the person changed and came towards them, the horse goes, "Oh my goodness," and scoots away. The thing to do there is, as quick as you can, keep following them, crowd them, and get a hand on them. The moment you get a hand on them, 9 out of 10 horses will just melt and go, "Oh, is that all you wanted?" But for a lot of horses, when you go up to them like that and they're walking, you'll find that they'll want to just take off and run quicker. So the first thing is not to back off, but to keep presenting yourself and put a hand on them as soon as you can. And whether it's at the hip or the shoulder or the neck or the face, it doesn't really matter. Just be wary though, if your horse is really worried by you approaching like that, if you go to the hip, don't be in the line of fire if they want a cow kick because they got a fright. And you know, it should be okay for you to go up to your horse and pet him while he's moving. And the other thing I'd add to that is I'd encourage him to keep moving, not just stop. They can stop. It's okay to stop if they're really, really disconnected in a huge way and you have to do a lot. But then you want to be able to walk up to them, touch them and get out while they're still walking. So that's something you can play with. The other thing you can do is that you can ask for adjustments or transitions, if you like, and it can be within the gait. So you might ask, I might ask Six to go out again on the circle, and she's walking around, so she knows how to walk forward. And I said earlier, something you can do is ask them to do something they know how to do, excuse me, but in a different way. So that's the walk she wants to give me. Now what if I ask her to slow it down? Slow it even more. Slow it even more. You could imagine that this sort of slow walk takes quite a bit of mental effort to pay attention. And then I say speed up. So I got a few steps out of that. Now I'm going to ask her to slow down. There she goes to leave. I hope you saw that. She went to leave. I'll ask her to slow down. Slow it down. Slow it even more. Chop, slow. Thank you. Bit more. Good. I want to see you overtaken by snails. So I got half a dozen steps or so, and now she can go forward. We could do the same thing with the trot. If I ask her to just step out a little bigger, I want her to jog, so I'm going to slow the trot like that, a little more. Just slow the trot a little. Now I'll ask her to trot out a little bigger, like that. And now she can slow it down again. Come on, a little more, a little jog. Good. And then she can go to her walk, and then she can quit. So you can do these transitions within the gait. And of course you could do transitions between gaits. So you can go from walk to trot to walk, and trot to halt, and trot to canter, and walk to canter, and you can do all those things as well. One thing I'd like to point out is, if you noticed, I probably didn't ask Chop to do any more than one circle before I was interrupting her with another request. And that's pretty important. So I'm not going to go round and round and round for 6 laps and then say, oh, she looks like she's not paying attention very well, I better do something. The more disconnected she is, the more frequent my transitions. And you'll see in some cases, at times, if you've come to my clinics, you might see within 1 lap, I've done 4 or 5 transitions in the one circle. So it depends very much how strongly disconnected your horse becomes. A lot of people like to use obstacles to help a horse focus more. And I have no problem with that. That's great. I've set up just a pole here just to give an example, but in essence it's neither here nor there what you use. You could use poles or tarpaulins or puddles or dirt banks or cones or cavalettis, gates. It doesn't really matter, even trees, to help a horse. And again, it's all about interrupting her thought. So when you ask her to do something, how does she do it? The quality that she does it, or does she do it blindly and just robotically go over the poles or over the tarp as if it doesn't even exist? That isn't very helpful. So I'm going to ask Six to go over there, come around negotiate the stop in front of the pole. Now I'm going to ask her to step and just take a foot, 1 foot, over the pole. That'll do. Now 1 foot back. Good. Now she can go 1 foot forward again and stop. And she can go another foot forward over the pole and stop. And then she can go forward. Or I could ask her to trot. Come on. And stop in front of the pole. No, just stop in front, little one. Now back up. Back up. And go. Go. Or I could even ask her in front of the pole to side pass, like that, and go over the pole. So they're just a couple of things you could do, and there's a lot more. You could have multiple poles. You could have a pole with a little jump. You could do anything. But remember, it's not about negotiating obstacles, it's about getting her to pay attention. And the more things you give her, such as that entice her to pay attention to the pole or the tarpaulin or the puddle, but she still listens to you, that's a real big win. That's a really important win. So they're just some ideas about focus, and you can play with these. I really urge you not to just use this as a template for how you're going to work your horse and help their focus. I really urge you to try and figure out a way that you can do it that best suits you and your horse. You know, some horses are going to be further along and doing better than 6 is, and others are not. So you have to adjust. You wouldn't necessarily ask you wouldn't necessarily ask your horse to stop in front of a pole like that, or to leg yield in front of the pole if they don't simply know how to leg yield or how to stop easily on a straight line. You just wouldn't do it. You'd start with some more leading exercises. But your horse can do stuff, and you have to fit your strategy around what your horse can do. Just make it so that he can do it better. I hope that gives you plenty of things to think about. Good night, Alice, wherever you are.